Well, hey, everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to Outbreak News TV. And today we're going to take a look at a news story that's coming out of the land down under, and that's Japanese encephalitis. This has been going on for a couple months now, and it's actually a very big story with uh, where did it come from? How has climate change affected this? And the like. And it's a reasonably dangerous viral pathogen. So let's take a little look at a little bit more about Japanese encephalitis. Now, I want to go ahead and start out with just a little bit of a introduction to JE. And Japanese encephalitis, or JE, virus is the leading cause of vaccine preventable encephalitis in Asia and the Western Pacific. JE virus, which is a flavivirus, very closely related to West Nile and St. Louis encephalitis viruses. It's transmitted to humans through the bite of an infected Culex mosquito, particularly, and forgive the pronunciation, Culex tritaniohinchus mosquito. Now, the virus can cause reproductive losses and encephalitis in pigs and horses. It rarely can cause disease in humans. People and horses are considered dead end hosts. So once infected, they don't play any role in the transmission of the virus. The viral load is too low. But the pigs and some species of wild birds are considered amplifying hosts. Now, JE virus transmission occurs primarily in rural agricultural areas. It's often linked to rice farming, rice production, any kind of flooding, irrigation. In some areas of Asia, these conditions can occur reasonably close to urban centers. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the geography. Where do we find Japanese encephalitis? And I'm going to go to a nice map from the CDC that will demonstrate it pretty well. And hopefully you can see that. And there's about 26 countries in Asia and the Western Pacific that have Japanese encephalitis virus, which has been identified there. And you can see that everything from Australia to Vietnam, 24 countries. The interesting thing about Australia, if you get a good look at this, historically, it's just been the tip, this little tip of northern Queensland, just across from Papua New Guinea. But that apparently has changed. So 26 countries. So the situation in Australia, let's take a look at that. And then I got to switch around for different slides. And let's take a look at the situation in Australia. All right, very good. So the situation in Australia shows us this. In February 2022, JE was detected and confirmed in piggeries in Victoria, Queensland, and New South Wales. On March 4th, cases were detected in South Australia. Currently, as of today, more than 70 infected piggeries have been reported across these 4 states. In addition, there's been at least one case in end of March of a alpaca that was confirmed in the Adelaide Plains area. Alpacas, like horses, are dead-end hosts and also like people. Also in March, the Northern Territory government confirmed that a small number of feral pigs from the West Daly region tested positive for JE. And of course, that's, having feral animals positive for this is a bigger concern because there's somewhat less control, right? All right. The next thing I want to take a look at is what has been the human toll right now in Australia. And let me bring up the next slide for that. And here we go. Hopefully you can see that well. All right. Now the next slide demonstrates some very specific numbers. So as of April 20th of this year, this is the latest that's being provided by the Australian Department of Health. There's been 37 human cases of Japanese encephalitis virus in Australia. 25 have been confirmed by laboratory testing. New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, and Victoria. Then there's another dozen probable cases that have been linked epidemiologically or symptoms of the disease and has laboratory suggestive evidence. And again, it's the same for Australian states. There has been 3 fatalities, unfortunately, one each in New South Wales, South Australia, and one in Victoria. Now, let me go ahead and go back to the geography real quick. And give me 1 second to get to that. Okay, here we go. And back to the geography. And as I kind of mentioned earlier, Japanese encephalitis virus is not novel to Australia. And as you can see in this map, that tip of Australia has had Japanese encephalitis. So there's been, of course, imported cases from travelers. And then there's that space between Australia and Papua New Guinea called the Torres Strait Islands. And they've been reporting cases there since I think 1998, around that time, on the northernmost tip of North Queensland. Okay, let me go ahead and swing back to information about how did the virus get there. And right now, it is unknown. How did the virus come to the mainland, particularly in southern Australia? Because this is the first time that Japanese encephalitis virus has been detected in southern Australia. People with the Department of Agriculture in Australia say it is likely that the movement of infected mosquitoes or migratory water birds may have played a part in the virus's spread. That sounds logical. They've also had, some weather events there in the past year or two with La Ninas, and so there's been a lot of flooding and other issues of that nature. I want to go to a wonderful article that I found on the website Bug Bitten. And let me get there 1 second. And very good piece. And this is by disease ecologist Dr. Christian Magori. I think he's from Eastern Washington University. And he wrote, and this gives you a little idea of what's going on with the economic damage too. Pig farming is a major industry in Australia, with 2.4 million pigs being kept at 4,300 sites, employing 36,000 people in the industry. Many of these piggeries are located in the eastern states, providing millions of hosts for Japanese encephalitis virus. Fortunately, the virus cannot be transmitted in pork, so even eating infected pigs is safe. The virus does cause reproductive failure in infected swine and can result in stillbirths, causing economic damage to growers. This is how Japanese encephalitis in southern Australia was detected, but it also means that pigs must have been infected as pregnant sows many months before. The detection of this virus in pigs means that people working and living around piggeries could be exposed to infected mosquitoes and contract Japanese encephalitis virus. Very importantly, a vaccine is available to protect pigs against the virus, but it is not yet licensed in Australia. There's also several safe and effective vaccines available to protect humans, but their supply is limited. The Australian government is currently establishing a vaccination program for people who work at or reside around piggeries. Also, they are conducting mosquito surveillance and working with the virus. Um, reside around piggeries, people that are conducting mosquito surveillance, or people that work with the virus or mosquitoes in research or diagnostic laboratory settings. So, very good article in Bug Bitten. I highly recommend viewers to check that out. He brings some very interesting perspectives to this situation in Australia. Let's see what else the Australian government is working on uh, to prevent or get this under control. I guess that's one way to put it. And if I go back to the Australia Department of Health, what we are doing, a national working group will support Australia's response to the Japanese encephalitis virus situation. This will include mosquito surveillance and control measures. And of course, as we just mentioned, the rollout of vaccines, particularly for those at direct risk. Public health communications regarding mosquito protection will target affected communities. There may be people that are not totally aware of the risk that are involved around these piggeries. So it's important to, ramp up the communications and the education for this population. All right. And lastly, I want to go to the CDC website and just give you a little information about the symptoms and the treatment, the pathology that goes on with Japanese encephalitis when we're talking about human beings. And let me make sure you guys can see that. Okay, here we go. All right, so less than 1% of people infected with Japanese encephalitis virus develop clinical illness. In persons that who develop symptoms, the incubation period, which is the time from infection until illness, is about 5 days to 2 weeks. Initial symptoms often include fever, headache, and vomiting. You may also see mental status changes, neurological symptoms, weakness, movement disorders might develop, over the next few days after the initial symptoms. And seizures are common among children. Among patients who develop encephalitis, about 1 in 4 are going to die, 20 to 30%. Although some symptoms improve with acute illness, up to half of survivors continue to have neurological, cognitive, and psychiatric symptoms. So, yeah, we're talking about something that's very, very serious here, and it can't be taken lightly. And it's got to be a big, big concern for the country of Australia, the continent of Australia. And that's really what I wanted to lay down here and let you know what's going on in Australia. What's the situation with the piggeries? What's the situation with humans? What's the Department of Health, Department of Agriculture doing? And just give you a little rundown on geography and symptomology and treatment, which there really is none. It's supportive, right? There are some vaccines, and but as the report gave you, that they are in very short supply. So treatment is primarily supportive, like many viral diseases. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up right there. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it. And I'll see you next time on Outbreak News TV. Have a great day.